What's the most awkward situation you've ever been in with a stranger? I worked security at an aquatic theme park and was watching Jeopardy in the employee entrance. One of the veterinarians came through and watched it with me for a bit. He said he watches it religiously and he passed the test for the show and was hoping to get selected. He'd heard that they like to have a diverse group of contestants, and they hadn't had a black guy for a while, so he liked his chances. A few days later, there are 2 black contestants, so when I see him leaving the next time I say, "Hey, did you catch Jeopardy last week?" "No, why?" He responds, "There were 2 black guys on it." I explain. He just stares at me blankly for a few seconds and walks off. That's when I realized it was a different gentleman than I had the previous conversation with. In the cinema, I interlocked my fingers with the kid sitting beside me for a full minute. Turns out, he wasn't my kid. Got on an elevator with a woman and she had on these really nice boots, so I complimented them by saying nice boots. She cups her breasts and says, "Well, you're not shy. Thank you, they're real," and then immediately realized I said booties. She thought I said nice boobs. Longest elevator ride ever. To this day, whenever I say boots in any context, I do so with a very hard deliberate T. The most awkward moment of my life thus far was with a stranger. I was in Quebec airport going through customs with my family. Because of some recent changes to their system, they didn't have everyone in a line, but instead in a large pen where they would release 50 people at a time. Chaos. When my family is at the front, they release us and everyone is running forward in a mass trying to get to the kiosks. Next to me is a tall Swedish man trying to get his family a kiosk. He is running forward and waving his arm behind him in a come on motion, clearly frantic. Well, somehow the worlds aligned where his middle and pointed finger went perfectly into my 2 nose holes. Perfectly, as he then ripped his arm upwards to motion his family forward. My nose was also ripped forward, and I immediately began bleeding everywhere. He looked at me in horror. My family looked at me in frustration as we needed to get to a kiosk. The customs agents looked at me in bewilderment. The language barriers made the situation all the more awkward. Woman at a gas station didn't know how to put air in her tires, so I helped her because I wanted to put air in my tires and didn't want to wait all day to do it. She called her husband on speakerphone to let him know she found some nice man to help her air her tires. Then I hear him call her an idiot and say that I'm only helping her because I want to fuck her, and where does she get off talking to other men? She stammered and tried to explain that nothing was going on between us. After she got off the phone, she looked at me as if her husband just caught her fucking me and got in her car and left. No thank you, no nothing. And for some reason I felt guilty for even helping her out. Jesus, I feel awkward just thinking about it. At the airport, I walk up as the elevator door is closing and there is a woman inside with a stroller. I slowed down because I wasn't in a hurry and would rather catch the next one. Then I saw a little girl about 2 or 3 years playing in a flower pot thing nearby. I realized she was likely meant to be on the elevator with her mom, but the doors are closed by the time I put it together. I walk up to her and said, "Did your mommy get in the elevator?" She just shyly smiles. I sit down with her and decide to wait in place for a few minutes for the mom to realize. 1 minute or 2 later, a man walks up and says, "Excuse me, can I have child?" in a thick Russian Y accent. I was trying to decide what to ask to figure out if she was his kid, when the elevator door reopened and the woman came flying out yelling for the girl. She hops up happily and runs over to the mom. I stared at guy with an accusing look. Then he turned and got in the elevator too. IDK, what the heck was going on there? Was he with them? Did he think I was trying to take their kid? Was he a creeper following them? So awkward. I literally sat silent through the whole weird encounter. It was my first time voting in a presidential election in 2016 since becoming old enough to do so, and polling place was at a library. When I get to the front of the line and start filling out the required papers, I mention it's my first time and what to do next. After hearing this, the woman who was working there and helping me raised her voice and said, "Hey everyone, we've got a first time voter here," and started clapping so they all would clap as well. Nobody clapped, and I was just standing there really embarrassed before quietly saying, "Can I just go vote now?" My wife and I went out for a drink one night. We walk into the bar. I see someone I know at the bar with their back turned, walk up behind them and tickled their sides. Turned it, I didn't know this person. They just have me a weird look and walked away. Got their spot at the bar though. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would spend the weekend staying up late playing video games and eating junk food. I was also a cross-country runner, and on this particular night I was experiencing some extreme chafing from a long run earlier that day. While we were at the gas station getting Doritos and energy drinks, I announced to who I thought was my friend, "Man, my nipples really hurt." Upon realizing it was a complete stranger with whom I had just shared this intimate detail, I simply stared at him and said, "You're not my friend," and walked away. I didn't go back to that gas station for a long time. I worked at Old Navy and some lady was looking at men's shirts and she stopped me and held up this shirt and asked if I thought it would fit her son. I looked around and no one else was around. We stood in silence for maybe 30 seconds before she started laughing and said, "Oh, haha, you don't know my son, he lives in Michigan. We were in Washington State, never mind me, I'm just stoned. Haha," and then she went and bought the shirt. At an art studio in La, my girlfriend was wearing a denim jacket. As we looked at a piece together, out of the corner of my eye I saw the jacket and I reach over to grab her butt. A sudden "oh" comes from beside me and a woman 30 years older than me is standing there blushing. I tell her I thought she was someone else and run away to my girlfriend. A few minutes later the lady comes and finds us to talk about young love and how cute we are while making too much eye contact with me. I tried to make some moves on a girl when I was in high school. We were in a 7-Eleven near the back, and because of the late hour, I figured we were alone. When she turned me down and left, I decided to drown my sorrows with a bag of Sour Patch Kids and physically ran into the older, bearded man who had been buying nuts. He gave me a sympathetic look and opened his mouth as if to say something, and I panicked. I said, "See you tomorrow," and left the store. I still think about this nightly. I was at a movie theater with my brother. We were watching Pacific Rim. During the action scenes he had to fart like a motherfucker, so he waited until the music was at its loudest to be inconspicuous. The second he lifts his butt cheek and begins, the music stops and all everyone can hear in the movie theater is giant fog horn of a fart. Imagine the music in action scenes. How it builds and builds and builds, then has a moment of silence for a bit more drama. Then a fucking shart sounding fart takes it over. The reactions from the people in the theater were laughter, WTFS, and wow really yes. We were laughing so bad we were crying. Discovered, whilst at the top of St. Paul's Cathedral, that I am terrified of heights. A Norwegian woman was having the same experience. We were so unnerved we ended up holding one another and bumping down the spiral staircase on our backsides. Parted ways at the bottom without a word or a backward glance. My son had small Toy Story figurines but wanted big ones for Christmas. I walked into Toys R Us and asked the male clerk, "Do you have a large Woody?" He turned bright red. I wheeled around and marched out and didn't go back for months. Not long ago I incorporated a short visit to the local supermarket into my usual dog walk. The dog was tied up outside, and as I was crouched down to unclip him, a woman came out of the shop and fell over me. For a few brief seconds I was in the middle of a dog-old woman humping sandwich. We're British though, so everyone looked embarrassed and we both said sorry. I worked the entrance gate for a theme park. Our season pass holders used a biometric scan of their right index finger to verify their identity. One day a little girl walks up with her family, who only spoke Spanish, scans her pass and places her left finger on the scanner. I say, "Can you use your right finger, sweetie?" Then her mother raises the girl's right arm to show me she doesn't actually have a right hand. Seemed to be due to a birth defect rather than a horrific accident. However, her left finger keeps getting rejected, so I call a lead over to override the old scan and redo it. He then proceeds to say the same thing to the girl, followed by her mother raising the arm again. It was definitely more awkward for me than the family, but it gets worse. About 3 months later it happened again. The same little girl. Absolutely mortifying. Once I was at a dog groomer's to pick up my dog. It's fairly small, 20 pounds and white. Usually when I take him, he's got long semi-curly hair, and when I pick him up he has short straight hair, which is quite a change, and this is what I expect when I go to pick him up. I walk up to the counter and request my dog, and the clerk tells me he'll be out in a moment. 30 seconds later an attendant walks out to the lobby from the back door with a dog that immediately gets excited and tries to run away as soon as it rounds the corner to me. "Hey buddy," I say as I walk up and attempt to pick up my dog. but it turns around and starts recoiling back and gives me a nip as I try picking him up. An old man behind me asks, "Hey, is that your dog?" And me thinking it's a pretty weird question respond, "Yep." At that point he goes, "I don't think so, mister. That's my dog." And as I turn and realize this dog that looks just like mine after a grooming is 100 not my dog, my face goes completely red and the whole lobby starts laughing. To make it worse, the old couple whose dog it was stuck around just because they wanted to see what my dog actually looked like, and of course when he came out with a different haircut there was only a vague resemblance. Yikes.